So before we start, we're going to take the rubber piece out of our cooling kit so that it fits our motherboard, and we're going to start to install the cooler. You want to take the mounting plate and insert the 4 screws into the B position. And place it onto the motherboard, making sure that the 2 screw openings line up with the 2 screw openings on the board. Once it's right side up, we place the 4 plastic spacers. Now, after our plastic spacers are in, we're going to remove the plastic covering for the processor. And we're going to place in our 4790K i7 chip. The chip should sit on its own, gently, firmly. You see the mounting points and where it lines up. Once the processor is in place, we're going to take our thermal paste and just gently go across the processor. So that when we put the heatsink on, it'll spread out without becoming overly gooey. Next, we're going to put our metal brackets on, making sure that we line up with the outermost hole of the larger opening. Next, we're going to put on our securing caps. And lastly, we're going to put the cooler over the processor.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is install our power supply and run all the other cables that have to go through the back of the case. So to do that, we're going to flip the case over. And we're going to remove these 2 thumb screws. I took the first one out earlier to save time. Okay, once we're at the back of the case, we're going to unscrew these 3 thumb screws. And now the cover for the power supply is loose. So we can go ahead, flip the case back over, and you'll see this cover pops right out. So now we're going to take our power supply. And what we've done here, since this is modular, if you went with the one that we recommended, is we've connected only the cables we need, which are 2 PCI plugs for our graphics card, and 1 chain of SATA power for our DVD drive and the solid state. Once that's in place, you're going to take your screwdriver and 4 screws for the power supply, and you're going to secure it to the side of the case. Once the power supply is screwed in, we're going to take our bundle of cables and we're going to put the main power for the board and our 2 PCIs over to the side. And now we're going to run our other 2 cables through the back. 2 cables that we're going to run is the CPU power and a SATA power chain for our solid state drive and our DVD drive. So to do that, we're going to put these down through the opening in the case right here. You'll see there's a rubber grommet. before we flip the case back over, we're also going to put in 2 SATA cables, one for the solid state drive and one for the DVD drive. And those are going to go through this grommet right here. We're also going to go ahead and take the cover for the power supply. Run our 3 leftover cables through. And put this back over. Once we've got the case back over, we're going to pull through the CPU power, and we're going to pull through our SATA power. For the SATA power, what we're going to do is put it through the first tie down, and secure it back down. For the CPU power, we're going to put that through this grommet right here at the very top of the case, and that'll wind up coming out right next to where we need it on the board. Next thing we're going to do is install our solid state drive. Take out one drive there, and you're going to take the drive, and you'll see that there are 4 screw holes on the top of the solid state. And you're going to match those up with the screws on the drive bay. Going to slide the drive bay back in. And what we're going to do now is take the first SATA power in the chain and plug that in. And then we're going to feed the rest of it through this little opening right here for the DVD drives. Now, with our 2 SATA cables that we pulled through, we're going to take one of them and put it into the solid state, and put the other one through for the DVD drive. Once we've done all that, we can put the 3 thumb screws back for our power supply cover, and we will be done on the back of the case. Once you've got your case flipped back over, we only have a little bit left to do before we can put the board in. We're going to put our I/O port cover on, and to do this, it's very simple. We're just going to snap it in to the case. Hear a click, and it'll stay in place. So the next thing we're going to do is plug the cables for things like the reset switch, power switch, etc. into the distribution block for the motherboard. We're going to provide a supplementary picture of this, all connected, but it's very simple. Everything is labeled. You're just going to hook it up, making sure to match the positive and the negative sides. Once that's done, we are ready to drop the motherboard in place. So we have our board right here, and what we're going to do is drop it right down in, and you're going to see, if you went with the case that we recommended, that the standoffs for the board to screw into are pre-installed. What you're going to do now, once it seems like it's in place, is just push it out towards the I/O ports. And eventually you'll hear it sort of click in place, at which point all of the standoffs should line themselves up. And you can start screwing it down. There's 8 screws that we're going to screw down here. After the board's in place, the next thing we're going to do is put in our 2 RAM sticks. If you went with the RAM that we recommended, you should not have any issues with the height of the RAM and hitting the fan. If you do have issues, you might want to look into removing the heat sinks from your RAM as they're typically more just to make your RAM look high-end than it actually is functional. Next thing we're going to do is plug in all of the connectors down at the bottom of the board here. You'll see they're all labeled very clearly, and we'll provide a picture: HD audio, USB, and it's all labeled exactly the same on the board. We can also go ahead and take our cable for the USB 3 and plug that in. These are your front ports. After you've hooked up all the cables on the bottom of the computer, we can start plugging in our SATA connectors for the SSD and the DVD drive. All the SATA ports on this board are SATA 6G, so you can just go ahead and pop them right in. Next thing we're going to do is slide our DVD drive in. To do that's very simple. You're going to stick your hand right in where the DVD drive would go, and you're going to pop out one of the cosmetic covers. And the DVD drive itself is just going to slide in from the front. Now once it's in, you're just going to sort of go in and out with it until it locks in place. This is a completely screwless solution, so this will just lock itself down like it has right now. Once that's in, you can go ahead and plug in the power cable that we ran and the SATA cable.
The last thing we're going to do before putting our I/O cards in is plugging in the power for our fans.
Next thing we're going to do is put in our I/O cards. First one being the Thunderbolt card. And before we pop it in, you're going to want to take your Thunderbolt header cable and plug that right in next to the HD audio plug on the board. And then you're going to want to plug the other end into the top of the Thunderbolt card. This card specifically has to go in the last port on the board, otherwise it will not function properly. Next card to go in is going to be the graphics card, and that's going to go right here on the top. And again, you're going to take your thumb screws and secure it down. Next thing we're going to do is plug in the CPU power cable. Next thing you're going to want to do is plug in the power for the graphics card. That's the two PCIe plugs that we had you put into the power supply. And those will simply pop right in. And lastly, for the power, we have the main board power, which just pops right in on the side of the board. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to chat us on our new chat function on our website, call us at 800-323-2325, or leave a comment on this video.